too. The view of downtown Seattle spread out before me. The Space Needle, Elliott Bay, Mount Rainier in the distance. It was beautiful, peaceful. Nothing like the chaos in my head. I sat on a bench and finally let myself think about Marcus. He'd been living with this knowledge for 3 weeks. Sitting on evidence of his wife's affair. Watching her come and go. Listening to her lies. That had to be torture. But instead of just confronting Elena or filing for divorce quietly, he tracked me down. Found me at a coffee shop I frequented. Sat down beside me and blown up my life with 6 words. Why? He'd said he was tired of being the only one who didn't know what was happening in his own marriage. That I deserved the truth. But there was something else. Something in the way he'd looked at me. In that smirk when he'd asked me out. He wanted revenge. Not just against Elena. Against both of them. And he wanted me to be part of it. The wild thing was I understood. I understood the anger. The betrayal. The desire to make them feel even a fraction of what we were feeling. My phone buzzed again. Not Andrew this time. An unknown number. I opened the message. This is Marcus. Just wanted to make sure you're okay. I know that was a lot to process. The offer for tonight still stands. No pressure. Just thought you might want company from someone who understands what you're going through. I read the message 3 times. He was giving me an out. Making it clear I could say no. That there was no obligation. But he'd also given me his number. Made the first move. Opened the door. I thought about going home. Sitting in that empty house. Waiting for Andrew to come back from wherever he actually was. Pretending I didn't know. Playing the role of the oblivious wife for one more night. The thought made me feel sick. I looked out at the Seattle skyline. The city I loved. The life I'd built here. The marriage I'd thought was solid. All of it felt different now. Like I'd been living in a carefully constructed illusion and someone had finally pulled back the curtain. I opened my text thread with Marcus and started typing. I'm okay. Or I will be. What time did you say? The response came within seconds. 8 o'clock. The Nest on Pike Street. I'll be at the bar. I sent back a simple thumbs up. Then I stood from the bench and headed back toward my car. I had 5 hours to figure out what I was doing. 5 hours to decide if I was really going to meet a stranger for drinks while my husband was presumably with his mistress. The old Hannah would have gone home. Would have confronted Andrew. Would have handled this the responsible, mature way. But the old Hannah had been blind. Had ignored her instincts. Had let herself be made into a fool. This Hannah, the one who now knew the truth, wanted something different. I wanted to feel seen. To feel wanted. To feel like I mattered to someone. Even if that someone was a stranger using me for revenge. At least he was honest about it. I drove home with Marcus's text still glowing on my phone screen. 8 o'clock. The Nest on Pike Street. I'll be at the bar. 5 hours. I had 5 hours to decide if I was really doing this. But first I needed to go home. Not to confront Andrew, he wasn't even there, but to see our house with new eyes. To look at the life we'd built and understand how much of it had been real and how much had been performance. The drive from Cary Park to Ballard took 20 minutes. I barely registered the route. My hands gripped the steering wheel. My mind kept replaying that photograph Marcus had shown me. Andrew's hand on Elena's face. The tenderness in his expression. The intimacy. I pulled into our driveway just after 3. Andrew's car was gone, of course. He was presumably still at Elena's apartment in Queen Anne, living his secret life while I'd been sitting on a park bench trying to process the ruins of my marriage. The house looked exactly as I'd left it this morning. Small craftsman with blue-gray siding. Window boxes I'd planted with flowers last spring. A front porch where we used to sit on summer evenings with wine and conversation. It looked like a home. Like a place where 2 people loved each other. But appearances were lies. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, making everything look warm and inviting. But the warmth was surface level. Underneath, the house felt hollow. Empty of everything that mattered. I walked through the living room slowly, looking at everything like I was seeing it for the first time. Wedding photos on the mantel. Us laughing, kissing, looking at each other like we were the only 2 people in the world. Furniture we'd picked out together at weekend trips to vintage stores. Books on shelves representing both our tastes, our histories, our shared life. All of it felt like evidence now. Evidence of something that had once been real but wasn't anymore. I moved into the kitchen. The table where we used to eat breakfast together before work. The counter where Andrew would make coffee while I scrambled eggs. Simple domestic rituals that had felt meaningful once. When had we stopped doing those things? When had breakfast become something we did separately, in silence, avoiding eye contact? I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment. It had been gradual. Erosion instead of explosion. My phone buzzed. Another text from Andrew. Running even later than I thought. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you. 2 words he typed reflexively now. Muscle memory. Meaningless. I didn't respond. Just set my phone on the counter and walked toward our bedroom. This was where I needed to look. Where the evidence would be if there was any to find. I stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at the bed we'd shared for 5 years. The bed where we used to talk for hours before falling asleep tangled together. The bed that had become a neutral zone where we slept on opposite sides, careful not to touch. I walked to Andrew's side. Opened his nightstand drawer. Inside was exactly what I expected and nothing I wanted to see. Breath mints. The expensive cologne in a sleek black bottle I'd never seen him use at home. A leather-bound notebook I'd never noticed before. I picked up the notebook. Opened it. Inside were dates and times written in Andrew's precise handwriting. Abbreviations that didn't mean anything to me at first. Then I looked closer. Key. Is 7 p.m. Queen Anne. Elena's apartment. W. Lunch. Waterfront Marriott. Where Marcus had photographed them. SI. Weekend. San Juan Islands. The bed and breakfast reservation I'd find evidence of later. He'd been keeping a log. Tracking his affair like it was a project. Something to manage and schedule around his real life. Around me. My hands trembled as I set the notebook down. Closed the drawer. I moved to his closet. Opened the door. His suits hung in neat rows. Shirts organized by color. Shoes lined up on the floor. Everything orderly and controlled. Just like his lies. I dragged a chair over from the corner. Climbed up. Reached for the top shelf where Andrew kept things he didn't use regularly. Old tax documents, college yearbooks, boxes of cables and chargers. My fingers found a shoebox pushed toward the back. Different from the others. Newer. I pulled it down. Sat on the edge of our bed. Opened it. Inside were hotel receipts. Dozens of them. Different hotels across Seattle. Dates going back 7 months, not 6 like Marcus had said. 7 months. Beneath the receipts was a handwritten card on expensive stationery. The kind you bought at boutique paper stores, not drugstores. Counting the days until I see you again. You make everything better. E. Her handwriting was elegant. Confident. The words were intimate. Familiar. This wasn't just physical. This was a relationship. Something with depth and history and emotional investment. I set the card aside. Kept digging. A printed email confirmation for a bed and breakfast in the San Juan Islands. The dates matched a weekend 3 months ago when Andrew told me he had a work conference in Portland. He'd left Friday morning with his overnight bag. Came back Sunday evening talking about panel discussions and networking events. All lies. He'd been with Elena. At the place we'd talked about visiting for our anniversary. The romantic island getaway we'd never quite made time for. He'd taken her instead. The betrayal felt physical. Like something cutting through my chest. I put everything back in the box. Put the box back on the shelf. Climbed down from the chair. My phone buzzed again. Not Andrew this time. Okay, now I'm worried. You never blow me off. What's going on? I stared at her message. Rebecca had been my best friend since our sophomore year of college. We'd been roommates for 3 years. Been in each other's weddings. Talked each other through breakups and career changes and every major life decision. She'd known something was wrong with my marriage for months. Had asked careful questions. Made gentle observations. Offered to listen whenever I was ready to talk. I'd shut her down every time. Insisted everything was fine. Made excuses for Andrew. Defended him. Because admitting something was wrong meant facing it. And facing it meant my marriage might actually be over. Now it was over. I just hadn't made it official yet. I typed back, I'm okay. I promise. Just dealing with something unexpected. I'll call you tomorrow and explain everything. Her response came immediately, I'm here whenever you need me. Day or night. I mean it. I smiled despite everything. Rebecca was steady. Loyal. The kind of friend who showed up when things fell apart. I set my phone down and made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Andrew tonight. Wasn't going to call him out on his lies or demand explanations. What would be the point? He'd been lying for 7 months. He was practiced at it. He'd have excuses ready. Would make me feel crazy for doubting him. I was done feeling crazy. Instead, I was going to get ready. Put on something that made me feel beautiful. Meet Marcus at that bar. Have drinks with someone who looked at me like I was worth looking at. Maybe it was revenge. Maybe it was reckless. Maybe it was the worst decision I could make. But it was my decision. My choice. For once, I was going to do something for myself instead of waiting around for Andrew to remember I existed. I walked into the bathroom. Turned on the shower. Let the water heat up while I undressed. Standing under the hot spray, I felt the afternoon's shock and hurt start to wash away. Not gone. Just less immediate. Less overwhelming. I'd been living in denial for months. Ignoring every sign. Every instinct. Every moment when something felt off. Now I knew the truth. And knowing meant I could finally stop pretending. I got out of the shower. Dried off. Stood in front of my closet in just a towel. I pulled out a black wrap dress I hadn't worn in over a year. Andrew used to love this dress. Would compliment me every time I wore it. Pull me close. Tell me I looked beautiful. But I'd stopped wearing it because somewhere along the way he'd stopped noticing. Stopped complimenting. Stopped looking at me like I was someone worth seeing. I put on the dress. It still fit perfectly. Still looked good. I did my makeup carefully. Smoky eyes. Red lipstick. The kind of makeup that took effort. That said I cared about how I looked. I hadn't done this in months. Maybe longer. At some point I'd stopped trying. Stopped putting in effort for a man who barely looked at me anymore. I styled my hair in loose waves. Put on heels that made my legs look long. Added simple jewelry, small earrings, a delicate necklace. When I looked in the bathroom mirror, I barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different, but because the woman staring back looked awake. Alert. Alive. She looked like someone who'd stopped waiting around for her life to start. I grabbed my purse. Checked my phone. 6:30. An hour and a half until I was supposed to meet Marcus. I didn't let myself think too hard about what I was doing. Didn't let myself question or second guess. I just walked out of the house, got in my car and drove toward downtown Seattle. Toward the nest. Toward Marcus. Toward whatever came next. The surprising part wasn't that I was doing this. The surprising part was that I didn't feel guilty at all. I arrived at the nest 15 minutes early. Parked 2 blocks away and sat in my car for a moment, hands still gripping the steering wheel. What was I doing? I was about to walk into a bar to meet a man I'd known for less than 6 hours. A man who'd shown me proof that my husband was cheating. A man who'd looked at me with those intense blue-gray eyes and asked me to forget Andrew and spend the evening with him instead. This wasn't me. I didn't do impulsive. Didn't do reckless. But the old me, the one who followed rules and made responsible choices, had ended up married to a man who'd been lying to her face for 7 months. Maybe it was time to try something different. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror one last time. Touched up my lipstick. Took a deep breath. Then I got out of the car and walked toward the bar before I could change my mind. The nest was exactly the kind of place I expected Marcus to choose. Upscale without being pretentious. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Soft jazz playing just loud enough to create atmosphere without overwhelming conversation. Dim lighting that made everything feel intimate and separate from the outside world. I spotted Marcus immediately. He was leaning against the bar in dark jeans and a fitted navy button-down with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. The casual elegance of someone who knew exactly how good he looked without trying too hard. When he saw me walk in, his entire face changed. Not a polite smile. Real pleasure. Like seeing me was the best part of his day. When was the last time Andrew had looked at me like that? I couldn't remember. "You actually came," Marcus said as I approached. "Did you think I wouldn't? I thought there was a 50-50 chance you'd go home, confront your husband, and decide I was just some crazy person who ambushed you at Starbucks." He signaled the bartender. "I'm really glad you didn't." "Honestly," I said. "I considered it." "What changed your mind?" I thought about the shoebox of hotel receipts. The notebook tracking his affair like a project. The 7 months of calculated lies. I realized confronting him wouldn't change anything. He made his choice. Now I'm making mine. Something flickered in Marcus's expression. Understanding maybe. Or recognition. The bartender appeared. Marcus ordered whiskey neat. I ordered an old-fashioned because it felt like the kind of drink you ordered when your life was falling apart and you were meeting a stranger in a bar. We took our drinks to a private booth in the corner. The view through the windows was stunning. The Seattle skyline glittering against the dark water, ferries crossing the bay, the city alive with lights and movement. It looked peaceful. Beautiful. Nothing like the chaos inside me. So, Marcus said, settling into the booth across from me. How are you feeling? I laughed. Couldn't help it. That's a loaded question. Fair enough. He took a sip of his whiskey. Let me rephrase. What happened after I left the coffee shop? I told him. About tracking Andrew's location to an apartment in Queen Anne. About going home and searching through his things. About the notebook and the receipts and the card from Elena. Marcus listened without interrupting. His expression shifted as I talked. Anger, sympathy, recognition. When I finished, he shook his head slowly. 7 months, he said. Elena told me it started 6 months ago at that conference. But if you found receipts going back 7 months. She lied to you too, I said. Apparently. He drained the rest of his whiskey. I hired the investigator 3 weeks ago after I found the burner phone. He confirmed the affair but only tracked them back 6 months. I should have told him to dig deeper. Would it have made a difference? Marcus considered that. Probably not. 6 months. 7 months. Either way, they both chose to do this. To lie to us. To build something secret while we sat at home being faithful. The word faithful hit harder than I expected. As I had been faithful. 5 years of marriage, through all the distance and coldness and neglect, I'd never once considered being with someone else. Till now. Tell me about Elena, I said, needing to shift the conversation away from Andrew for a moment. Marcus leaned back in the booth. We met in college. University of Washington. I was studying architecture. She was pre-law. We were together 6 years before we got married. What was she like then? Ambitious. Driven. I liked that about her initially. She knew what she wanted and went after it. He paused. But somewhere along the way, her ambition became the only thing that mattered. She postponed having kids because she wanted to make partner first. Worked 70-hour weeks. Stopped coming home for dinner. Stopped asking about my day or telling me about hers. Sounded painfully familiar. I wanted to build a family, Marcus continued. Design our dream house. Raise kids. Create something lasting. Elena wanted the corner office and her name on the letterhead. Those goals pulled us in different directions until we were basically roommates who shared a last name. When did you realize it was over? I asked. Honestly, about a year ago. But I kept trying. Suggesting date nights she was too busy for. Planning vacations she canceled. Asking if we could talk about having kids and getting shut down every time. He met my eyes. Sound familiar? Painfully. We sat in silence for a moment. The jazz played softly. Around us, other couples talked and laughed, living their normal lives. The investigator said the affair started at a legal conference, Marcus said. Andrew's firm and Elena's firm both had panels. They met at some networking event. Started talking. Exchanged numbers. How romantic, I said, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. Right. Marcus signaled the bartender for another round. They connected over their demanding careers and absent spouses. Probably bonded over how hard it is to maintain work-life balance. Then decided the solution was to sleep with each other instead of, actually communicating with the people they married. The bartender brought fresh drinks. I took a long sip of my old-fashioned, letting the whiskey burn down my throat. Can I ask you something? I said. Why did you wait 3 weeks to tell me? You found out about the affair. Hired an investigator. Got all the proof. Why not just confront Elena? Or file for divorce quietly? Why track me down? Marcus studied his glass for a moment before answering. Because I was tired of being the only one who didn't know what was happening in my own life. Elena had been lying to me for months. Making decisions about our marriage without my input. I wanted to give you the same information. The same choice. But there's more to it than that, I said. Isn't there? His mouth curved into that slow, deliberate smirk I'd seen in the coffee shop. You're perceptive. So what's the real reason? Revenge, he said simply. I wanted Andrew and Elena to know what it feels like to be on the other side. To come home and realize your spouse isn't waiting. Isn't sitting there being faithful while you're out building your secret life. I should have been put off by that. By the calculated nature of it. But I wasn't. Because I understood it. Completely. And what do you get out of this? I asked. Besides revenge? Marcus leaned forward. The dim lighting made his eyes look darker. More intense. Honestly, I wanted to meet you. The investigator's report had your name and address. Basic facts. But I wanted to know who you actually were. The woman Andrew was willing to risk everything to betray. The way he said it, not with pity or curiosity but with genuine interest, made my breath catch. And what do you think now? I asked. I think Andrew's an idiot, Marcus said. I think he had something real and traded it for something secret. And I think you deserve better than being someone's backup plan. Something shifted in the air between us. The conversation had moved from shared pain to something else. Something charged and dangerous and electric. I realized I was leaning toward him across the table. That his hand had moved closer to mine. That I wanted him to close the remaining distance. Hannah, Marcus said softly. I need you to know this isn't just about revenge for me. Not anymore. What is it about? This. He reached across the table and took my hand. His touch was warm. Deliberate. This conversation. The fact that I've known you for 6 hours and already feel more connected to you than I have to Elena in the past 2 years. My heart was racing. Marcus. I know it's crazy, he said. I know we're both in the middle of our marriages falling apart. I know this is probably the worst possible timing. But I don't regret approaching you today. Not for a second. I looked at our hands. His fingers laced through mine. The simple intimacy of it. I don't regret saying yes, I whispered. Marcus smiled. Not the smirk this time. Something real and genuine and vulnerable. Good, he said. We stayed at the bar for another hour. Talking about everything and nothing. Our childhoods. Our careers. The dreams we'd had before life got complicated. The things we still wanted if we ever got the chance. Marcus told me about his architecture firm. About designing affordable housing for communities that needed it. About how Elena had always thought he should go into commercial development instead. Where the real money was. I told him about my marketing work. About the startup and the long hours and how throwing myself into my career had become a way to avoid going home to an empty house. Around midnight, Marcus paid the tab and we walked outside. The night air was cool and clear. The waterfront stretched out before us, dark water reflecting city lights. Walk with me? Marcus asked. I nodded. We walked along the pier, close enough that our shoulders brushed. Close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. When did you stop being happy? Marcus asked suddenly. I thought about it. Really thought about it. I don't think it was one moment. It was gradual. Like watching a sunset, where you don't notice it getting dark until you're already in shadow. Marcus stopped walking. Turned to face me fully. That's exactly it, he said. That's exactly what it was like with Elena. We stood there on the pier. The water lapped against the pylons below. The city hummed around us. Hannah, Marcus said softly. I know this is insane. We met this afternoon. But I don't regret any of it. Neither do I whispered. He stepped closer. Close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his eyes. Close enough that I could feel his breath. Can I kiss you? He asked. I should have said no. Should have stepped back. Should have remembered I was still technically married. But I didn't want to. Yes, I said. He kissed me. Not tentative or apologetic, but certain and deep, like he'd been thinking about it all night. I kissed him back. My hands found his shoulders. His arms wrapped around my waist. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt completely, terrifyingly alive. When we finally pulled apart, both of us slightly breathless, Marcus rested his forehead against mine. Come home with me, he said softly. I should have said no. Should have taken a step back. Should have reminded myself I was still technically married, that this was moving too fast, that I needed time to process everything. But I didn't want to say no. Yes, I whispered. Marcus's apartment was in South Lake Union, a 15-minute drive from the waterfront. We didn't talk much during the ride. He drove with one hand on the wheel, the other holding mine across the center console. The silence felt comfortable. Natural. Like we'd done this 1,000 times before. The building was modern glass and steel. The kind of place successful young professionals lived. We took the elevator to the 8th floor. Marcus unlocked the door and gestured for me to go in first. The loft was exactly what I expected from him. Exposed brick walls. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Clean lines and thoughtful design. Architectural blueprints scattered across a massive desk in the corner. Bookshelves filled with design books and novels. A space that felt lived in but intentional. "It's beautiful," I said. "Thanks. I designed most of the interior myself." Marcus moved to the kitchen area. "Wine? Water? Something stronger." "Water's good." He poured 2 glasses and brought them to the living room. We sat on the couch, close but not touching. Outside the windows, Seattle glittered in the darkness. "So," Marcus said. "Here we are." "Here we are," I echoed. We looked at each other. The weight of what we'd done, what we were doing, hung between us. "I should feel guilty," I said. "I'm married. I just spent the evening with another man. Kissed him. Came home with him. But I don't feel guilty at all." "Neither do I," Marcus said. "And I've had 3 weeks to think about this. 3 weeks to decide if revenge was worth it. If involving you was fair." "Is it? Fair, I mean." "I don't know." He set his water glass down. "But I know I meant what I said earlier. This isn't just about revenge anymore. I wanted to meet you because I thought you deserved the truth. But now that I have met you, I'm glad I did. For reasons that have nothing to do with Andrew or Elena." My chest felt warm. Tight. Like something was expanding inside me. "Tell me about Portland," I said, needing to shift the conversation to something less intense. "You said you grew up there." Marcus smiled. "Trying to change the subject?" "Maybe a little." "Fair enough." He leaned back against the couch. "I grew up in a neighborhood called Laurelhurst. My parents still live in the same house. They've been married 42 years. Still hold hands. Still laugh at each other's jokes. They set a pretty high bar for what marriage should look like." "Is that why you tried so hard with Elena?" "Probably. I kept thinking if I just tried harder, if I was more patient, more understanding, we'd get to where my parents are. But you can't force that kind of connection. Either it's there or it isn't." I thought about my own parents. Still married. Functional. But not passionate. Not connected in any deep way. They coexisted more than they lived together. "I always wanted something more than what my parents had," I said. "They're not unhappy exactly." Kiss. Settled. Like they ran out of things to talk about 20 years ago and decided silence was easier. "Is that what scared you about your marriage?" Marcus asked. "Becoming your parents?" "Maybe. I hadn't thought about it that way before. Andrew and I used to talk for hours. About everything. Books, politics, dreams, stupid things that didn't matter. Then somewhere along the way we stopped. And I kept telling myself it was normal. That every couple runs out of things to say eventually. But it's not normal," Marcus said. "Or it doesn't have to be. My parents still talk. Still debate. Still share things. That's what I wanted with Elena. But she was always thinking about work. Always planning her next career move. I became background noise in her life. We talked until the sky started to lighten. About childhood memories and family dynamics. About career aspirations and the compromises we'd made. About the lives we'd imagined versus the ones we were actually living." Marcus told me about his architecture firm. How he'd started as a junior designer and worked his way to junior partner. How his dream was to design affordable housing for communities that needed it most. How Elena had always thought that was naive. That he should focus on luxury developments where the real money was. I told him about my marketing career. How I'd thrown myself into work as my marriage deteriorated. How being good at my job became a replacement for being happy at home. Somewhere around 5 in the morning we moved to his bedroom. Not for sex. Just to lie down. To be close to someone who understood what it felt like to watch a marriage die slowly. We lay tangled in his sheets as dawn light filtered through the windows. His arm around me. My head on his chest. Both of us exhausted but not ready to sleep. "When are you telling Andrew?" Marcus asked quietly. I'd been avoiding thinking about that. But I couldn't avoid it forever. "Today," I said. "This morning." I'm done pretending I don't know. Do you want me to come with you? I considered it. Having Marcus there would make it easier in some ways. But this was something I needed to do alone. No, I said. But thank you. Marcus pulled me closer. Whatever happens, you have my number. Use it. Day or night. I mean it. I nodded against his chest. Around 7 I forced myself to get up. Found my purse. Checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Andrew. 2 texts. Where are you? Getting worried. Call me. I almost laughed. Getting worried. Like he had any right to worry after 7 months of lying. I typed back. Stayed at Rebecca's. Needed space to think. Coming home soon. His response came within seconds. Okay. See you soon. Not, are you okay? Not, what's wrong? Just, okay. Like I was an appointment on his calendar. Marcus drove me back to the Starbucks where this had all started. Less than 24 hours ago, I'd been sitting at that same table thinking my biggest problem was a distant husband. Now I knew the truth. And I had to face it. Thank you, I said before getting out of his car. For telling me. For last night. For all of it. Marcus took my hand. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get messy. I know. But you're doing the right thing. Confronting him. Not letting him keep lying. I nodded. Squeezed his hand once. Then got out and walked to my car. The drive back to Ballard felt surreal. Like I was floating outside my body watching myself go through the motions. Park in the driveway. Walk to the front door. Turn the key. Andrew was in the kitchen making coffee. He wore the suit I'd bought him for his birthday. Navy blue. Perfectly tailored. He barely looked up from his phone when I walked in. How's Rebecca? He asked absently. I set my purse on the counter. Took a breath. I wouldn't know, I said. I didn't stay with Rebecca. That got his attention. He looked up. Confusion flickered across his face. What? I stayed with Marcus, I said calmly. Elena's husband. You know, the woman you've been sleeping with for the past 7 months. All the color drained from Andrew's face. His phone slipped from his hand, clattering onto the counter. Hannah. Don't. I held up a hand. I don't want explanations. I don't want apologies. I don't want to hear that it meant nothing or that you still love me. I just want a divorce. The word hung between us. Heavy. Final. Andrew's mouth opened and closed. He looked genuinely shocked. Like the thought of getting caught had never occurred to him. Like he'd actually believed he could maintain 2 separate lives indefinitely. How did you? He started. Marcus found me, I said. Showed me photos. Told me everything. Then I came home and found the rest myself. The notebook in your nightstand. The shoebox of hotel receipts. The card from Elena. Andrew's face went from pale to gray. You went through my things? I almost laughed. That's what you're worried about? My invasion of your privacy. Hannah, please. His voice cracked. We can work through this. It was a mistake. I was confused. She doesn't mean anything. Stop, I said firmly. Just stop. I walked past him toward our bedroom. He followed, words tumbling out in a desperate rush. He'd been stressed. Work was overwhelming. He'd made a terrible mistake. He loved me. He'd do anything to fix this. Couples therapy. Individual therapy. A fresh start. Whatever I wanted. I pulled my suitcase from the closet and started packing. Only my clothes. Personal items. Things that were definitively mine. I didn't want anything we'd bought together. Didn't want reminders of a life that had been built on lies. Hannah, please, Andrew begged. Don't do this. We can fix this. I'll end it with Elena. I'll quit my job if that's what it takes. I'll do anything. I zipped the suitcase closed. Turned to face him. You had 7 months to choose me, I said quietly. 7 months to decide our marriage was worth fighting for. You chose her. Every single day you chose her. Now I'm choosing me. But I love you. No, you don't, I said. You love the idea of having me as backup. Someone to come home to when Elena's too busy. Someone to make you feel like a good person. But you don't actually love me. If you did, you never would have done this. Andrew's face crumpled. So that's it? You're just giving up. I'm not giving up, I said, picking up my suitcase. You already did that. I'm just acknowledging it. I walked toward the door. Andrew grabbed my arm. You said you stayed with Marcus, he said, his voice taking on an edge. Elena's husband. What does that mean? I looked at his hand on my arm. Then at his face. Exactly what you think it means, I said. I pulled free and walked out of the house. Out of the marriage. Out of the life I'd been trying so hard to save. Andrew called my name. Followed me to the driveway. But I was already putting my suitcase in the car. Already getting in. Already driving away. In my rearview mirror I saw him standing in the driveway. Looking lost and smaller than I'd ever seen him. I didn't feel guilty. Didn't feel sad. I just felt free. I drove away from the house with my suitcase in the trunk and no clear destination in mind. Just away. Away from Andrew. Away from the life I'd been trying to save. Away from the person I'd been pretending to be. My phone started ringing almost immediately. Andrew. I declined the call. It rang again. Declined again. Then the text started. Please come back. We need to talk. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. Don't throw away 5 years over one mistake. One mistake. Like 7 months of calculated deception was a single error in judgment. I turned my phone on silent and kept driving. Ended up at a coffee shop in Fremont I'd never been to before. Sat in a corner booth with a latte I barely touched and tried to figure out what came next. I couldn't go back to that house. Every room held memories that felt poisoned now. The kitchen where we'd cooked together. The bedroom where we'd slept. The living room where we'd talked about our future. All of it felt like evidence of a beautiful lie. I pulled out my phone and opened a real estate app. Started searching for apartments. Something small. Temporary. Just a place to land while I figured out my next steps. I found a 1-bedroom in Capitol Hill. Available immediately. 6-month lease. Close to work. Close to the Starbucks where this had all started less than 48 hours ago. I called the landlord. Scheduled a viewing for that afternoon. Signed the lease 2 hours later. By evening I had a new address and no furniture except what I'd brought in my suitcase. I texted Rebecca. Can you help me move some things tomorrow? I left Andrew. Her response came within seconds. Oh my God. Yes. I'm coming over right now. Where are you? I sent her the address. 20 minutes later she knocked on my empty apartment door with takeout Thai food and a bottle of wine. Talk, she said, setting the food on the kitchen counter. Tell me everything. So I did. I told her about Marcus appearing in the coffee shop. About the photo of Andrew and Elena. About going home and finding the evidence. About confronting Andrew and walking out. I didn't tell her about spending the night at Marcus's apartment. That felt too complicated to explain. Too raw. Rebecca listened without interrupting. When I finished she pulled me into a hard hug. I'm proud of you, she said. For what? My marriage just ended. For choosing yourself, Rebecca said firmly. You could have stayed. Could have tried to fix it. Could have let Andrew convince you it was your fault. Instead you walked away. That takes guts. Her words meant more than she knew. I'd spent 5 years trying to be the perfect wife. Trying to fix what was broken. Trying to make Andrew happy at the expense of my own happiness. Choosing myself felt revolutionary. Rebecca helped me make a list of things I needed from the house. Essential items I couldn't live without. We agreed to go back the next day when Andrew would be at work. That night, I slept on an air mattress in my empty apartment. It should have felt depressing. Instead it felt like freedom. The next morning Rebecca and I went back to the house. Andrew's car was gone. I used my key to get in, half expecting him to have changed the locks. But he hadn't. The house felt different in daylight. Smaller. Less significant. We worked quickly. Loaded my clothes, books, laptop, personal items into Rebecca's SUV. I didn't take any furniture. Didn't take the wedding photos or the shared belongings.